friendless. He walks with me. He talks with me. See, God, all of these are how we see God. God is not the name. God is the symbol or the umbrella under which our experiences of God resides. What is his name? We don't know his name. Every time you got to go somewhere and pay a prophet to give you a word. Recently, I bought a pair of sunglasses from the internet that promised to allow me to see more clearly. The images were distorted, the colors were off. And then I thought about religious filters. Are we seeing people for who they really are? Or are we seeing people through our own perceptions of good and bad, our own values of right and wrong? Could it be that our image might be distorted? Maybe we need to take off our religious sunglasses and look through the natural eyes of love. Are you looking for more?
ALC, the Abundant Life Center. Dynamic living through spiritual growth. Go to myalc.org for more information.
I'm Ed Montgomery. Looking for more? I told you last week that we are talking about something, and I'm jumping right into this water. I know this water is ice cold because it's been cold all week long, so I'm jumping into this ice cold water. But I am told that there are benefits to jumping into ice cold water. I do not, athletes do it all the time, but I know nothing of jumping into ice cold water, so that is not what I want to do. But one of the things that I started talking about, I don't know if I'm calling it a series or not, but it is called the extraordinary I. And the extraordinary I is about, first of all, there is the physical aspect of who you are. Your body, there is your eyes, your senses, how you move and express yourself in the world. Then there is the psyche, or the ego. Now, the ego can be several hundred different things. These are how you express yourself to the people outside of you. These are your masks. From the day you are born into this planet, these masks, you start putting on these masks. You put on a mask that can get mama to show up if you cry a certain way. You get a mask that can deal with daddy and wrap daddy around your little finger. There are masks that you learn to put on. The mask you talk to a supervisor with, the mask you talk to a lover with, the mask you talk to a friend, the mask you talk to a banker, different things. So all of these masks mount up to the extent that you're not quite sure who you really are, because when you add them all together, it seems like this is who I am, the way I dress, the way I look, never understanding that we dress many times not because that's what I want to look like, but here's how I want to express myself to the world around me. Even falling in love, we do not fall in love with the person that is the intended, but we fall in love with someone that we love to love. It's all about me. That's what it's all about. It's about, in other words, I don't love you because you're lovable. I love you because you're lovable to me, to my concept. In other words, you are like me. This is why you want things, because it is what I want. That's the ego, is the I. But then there is another part of you that I call the extraordinary I. And we know it's here because this is the part that you talk to and talks back to you. You know that part of you. Hi. In other words, oh, good morning. Good morning. And another voice comes back and says, good morning. Maybe, maybe not. But you talk to that person and you say, now why did you turn down that street? You should have known better. You know, you thought of, it's something was telling you don't turn down that street. Something told me don't turn down that street. And I turned down that street anyway. Something told me. What's something? What is something? Who is something? Where was something born? This is what we call the extraordinary I. Who is that extraordinary I? The extraordinary I is a voice of reason. The extraordinary I is a voice that has counsel, and in most cases tells you, I told you so. That's the extraordinary I. Where does that extraordinary I come from? Now, we're a little hard pressed to talk about that because to admit where it comes from, it scares us. Because it must come from somewhere other than what the other eyes, the other egos, and the physical aspects of ourselves come from. So now we move into what is considered to be the cause of all things. Because this is why the extraordinary I is very important. Your scripture actually is going to come out of Mark chapter 5. You can look up Mark chapter 5, get a chance to read it, or if you can go down to probably around 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, maybe 25th, but maybe 26th or 27th. You will find this passage of scripture. I mean, the story is in there. And Jesus is doing some fantastic miracles. First of all, one of the first miracles out of Mark chapter 5 is Jesus had gone into the tombs and had cast out a demon from of what they call the demonic. And soon as that demonic came to Jesus and said to Jesus, hey, leave us alone. And Jesus turned around and says, what is your name? Now, interesting, he did not ask the man what his name was. He asked the demonic what his name was, which meant there was another type of I inside of that man. This is Jesus talking now. Jesus is not crazy. Jesus knows his stuff. And so he says, what is your name? And then the voice inside of the man says, we are legion. We are legion. We are legion, which means we are legion. And he says we are legion because you say our name is legion. And so what people in this day and age, when they preach it, they say, because Jesus was talking to legion. And legion said, okay, well, that's cool. But why was his name was legion? His name was legion. Well, no, it was not his name. It says we are legion. In other words, now we're getting ready to understand something we do not have any time at all to teach, and that is the understanding of a name. We've talked about that. A name has nothing to do with what you are called. It has to do with the character of what you are. We are legion means, and it explains it because we are many. And so Jesus understood it may be many of you little demons, but there's only one devil. So Jesus understood how to go to the source of power, whether it was his father or whether it was that one devil that had split itself up into many demonic forces. Principles are principles. Say principles are principles. Remember that now. And so all of a sudden they all listen and they throw them demons out and them demons run and jump into these pigs and all this kind of stuff. Well, Jesus leaves there, crosses the sea, and when he gets to the other side, he meets a man whose daughter is very sick on the verge of death and who begs Jesus, please come with me. Lay your hands on her and she will be all right. Jesus says, okay, I will come. Believe. Okay. On his way there, there's this woman that comes up and stops. And she, as a matter of fact, Jesus doesn't even know who she is. And all of a sudden, Jesus turns around and says, who touched me? And the disciples turn around and say, sir, you're in a very big crowd. Everybody's at this festival. We're going through a crowd. Everybody is touching you. Who touched my clothes? Everybody is touching your clothes, sir. You can't be so sensitive. Jesus says, no, power has left me. Say, power has left me. So we understand something else here, that it is possible for power to come and to go. It is possible for power to flow. Power is also authority, for authority or power to flow, and it's to flow one way or another. If power can flow, and that power, and Jesus turns around and says, who touched me? And the woman, there's a woman standing. I don't think I brought her in yet into the scene, but now there is a woman who is there kneeling, and she is worshiping him. She worships him because she gave him something, and he gave her something, because worship is giving. Now, she says, afraid, he says, what's going on? And he says, for I said within myself, for if I can but touch the hem of his, if I can but touch the hem of his garment, I shall be made whole. I did that thing. I did it. Jesus says, woman, your faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace. Your faith has made you whole. If her faith made her whole, I thought Jesus said he felt the power flow from him. Was it her faith or his power? Now, this is something you must ask yourself questions about in your everyday life. What makes you complete? What makes you feel better about yourself? What makes you come to a reckoning that I am who I am? And no matter how many people try to put me down or tell me I'm something else or try to pigeonhole me or put me in a cubby hole, I know who and what I am, because only by my knowing who I am does my faith make me whole. Now we're learning something about faith, the nature of things. If power flowed from Jesus, it also says that power is movable. Say, power is movable. It means that power can go from here, it can go from there. But still, it only says power flowed from me. Who had the power? Where did it come from? Well, it says power flowed from me, so Jesus is saying power flowed from me. Well, if power flowed from you, why don't you know who the power went to? Why are you asking the question? Because if it flows, it teaches us that the power did not come from Jesus. Jesus, walk with me now. Jesus often said things that I can do nothing of myself. I cannot do what I do unless the Father tells me. I don't see anything unless the Father sees it first. I only do what I hear the Father say, do what the Father says, speak what the Father says when I hear the Father say it, and do what the Father tells me to do when he does it. In other words, I reflect the Father. If the power flows, then he says, out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. We also know through my teachings earlier that the river of living water comes from the throne of God. From the throne of God, the scripture says, and in Revelation, out of the throne flowed the crystal waters, the living waters from the throne of God. Living waters is symbolic of spirit. So when he says the power flowed from me, it means that spirit flowed. Where did the power come from? Evidently, the woman went beyond Jesus and tapped into the power of the Father. Jesus was not the transmitter here. Jesus was the conduit. But the transmitter, the actual connection, the woman needed that healing, and she needed it fast. She didn't have time to wait for somebody to flip the on switch or for the disciples to say, sir, there's a woman here that needs you to heal. But the woman has an issue of blood, which means that if the crowd finds out about the disease that she has, she will be considered to be religiously unclean, and they will stone this woman because, you see, for her to be out in the open would demand that they kill her. So the woman had to get to Jesus before she died. She had to get to Jesus before the religious folk killed her. She had to get to Jesus and get done what she needed to do before the powers that be, not just the crowd, but the religious crowd. Everyone knew about her. The doctors knew about her because they were making their living off of her situation that could not be cured. They did not have the knowledge to cure her. Medical science had not come that far. Had they come that far, they could have cured her, but it had not come that far. Science was not strong enough at the time. Makes you wonder why people are fighting about science and don't want you to get vaccines or science, and want you to have faith but no vaccine, want you to have faith but no medicine for what you do, because you're supposed to have faith in God. I submit to you, you have no idea what faith is. Faith has been taught to us under the premise of Christian nationalism. Faith has been taught to us as some type of hoodoo kind of thing. And don't get me started here, because I have to be very careful that this is not my other show. This is not my radio show or my Wednesday night show where I can say what I want, where I say what I want to say a little bit more. This is Sunday morning, and so I have to be careful here. But this whole break that we have in religion and science, religion doesn't like science, and most people don't know why religion does not like science. Religion does not like science is because science, like they killed Copernicus years ago, centuries ago, because they made one statement, and the one statement was that the earth went around the sun, when the church had been preaching that the sun went around the earth. They preached that all planets and suns, that the earth was the center of the universe. Copernicus comes along and says, no, that's not true. Even Galileo said, that's not true. The earth is not the center of the universe. The sun is the center of our solar system, but there are other things that are the center. Earth is not the center. BC, by making earth the center, then the church was able to state that it was in control and had authority and dominion. God gave man dominion over the earth according to Genesis chapter 1. And if man had dominion over the earth, man was in charge of the earth. And if the earth was the center of the universe, then if you're the church, you are over the earth. So it meant that the church had power over the earth. And if the church had power over the earth, it had power over the people of the earth. So they could decide who they would impress or suppress. And it has not changed. Now, when you come to an understanding of this, now you come to another understanding that is important. And I'm keeping my time code in my head. I don't have my iPad. I forgot. It's somewhere back there. I forgot it. I put it in the car, I think. But I forgot. So my time code is in my head, which is not a good place for Dr. Ed's time code. We already know Dr. Ed's time code don't work very well. He gets off into holy places and forgets exactly where he is. But one of the things we understand about the flow of God and where things come from, and understand everything comes from the originator. Say the originator. Everything. When you hear me say, and sometimes I have to break things down because I say things and people say, will challenge me on it, and I'll say money comes from the originator. What do you mean money comes from the originator? Money doesn't come from the originator. And then I have to stop and say, oh yeah, okay, all right. Then I got to explain. Well, I don't have that. Just challenge me, and that's fine, because I'm not looking for you anyway. You need to sit down and listen to somebody. The originator, all abundance comes from the originator. Who is the originator? The originator is that power that is beyond everything. The originator is the one who, or not necessarily the one, but that which holds everything within its grasp. Are you talking about God? If I can. But you're calling God it. If you got a better word for God, then tell me. Oh, he's Jehovah Jireh. Well, what does that mean? Jehovah Sikkenu. And you run down all your Jehovah things that you learned in your Old Testament Bible study. But these are merely definitions of what he has done for that particular person. That's not his name. He don't have no name. Never did have a name. Never did tell his name. We think he did, but he didn't. They made up his name because they needed to make his name. Well, no, his name is Jehovah. His name is Yahweh. They made it up. If you look at Exodus chapter 3, when you go home and you read it, and he goes and he says, I am the God. He tells Moses. Moses said, now, who is this here? Who are you? And he says to Moses, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And your name is? Well, I never revealed my name to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You say, well, that's not true. Abraham called him El Shaddai. No, Abraham said El Shaddai is the multi-breasted one, or the one who provides without end. That's how Abraham saw God, as the one who provides without end. It's like we talk about God. Who is God? He's a mother for the motherless. He's a father for the fatherless, a friend for the friendless. He walks with me. He talks with me. See, God, all of these are how we see God. God is not the name. God is the symbol or the umbrella under which our experiences of God resides. What is his name? We don't know his name. He says to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, he tells Moses, I never did give my name to them. Moses says, well, can you tell it to me? And God hesitates, the scripture says, just a split moment out of the burning bush, and then says to Moses, I am that I am. I will be what I will be. I is what I is. That's Ebonics. And Moses says, who do I tell? When you send me back to them, the first thing they're going to want to know is your name. In other words, what are you about? What is your character? He says, tell them I am. So just to jump ahead, Moses goes back to the tribes. Moses goes back to the tribes and tells them. Now you understand, they go back to Moses. Moses is considered to be a Hebrew, but Moses is also came out, where Moses came from was actually Egypt. Moses is, in a sense, an Egyptian. Moses is a dark-skinned Egyptian. That's why he married a black woman. Yeah, it's true. He married a black woman, and his sister got mad at him because he married a black woman. And God said, bring her here. And they went to the temple at the church house. And God said, what are you doing telling my servant Moses about who he married? Well, he married a black woman. He shouldn't have been. This is in the Bible. And she said, and God says to her, listen, I talk through Moses to you. But to my servant Moses, I talk face to face. Now, here's what you're going to deal with. Since you don't like the black woman he married, I'm going to turn you white. And so he turned her white as leprosy. It's in the scripture. He turned her white, and she had to stay out of the camp for 7 days until her whiteness went away. See, maybe if some folks stayed out of America until their whiteness went away. Oh, I was talking about the Old Testament. And then they came back, maybe our country would be much better. And so God never named himself. God says, I am that I am. And so after a while, all the way, every chapter, he says, I am that I am. Moses kept having this inferiority complex until Moses finally turned around. And God said, listen, I'm sending you back to Pharaoh this time. And he ain't going to change his mind. When you go back to Pharaoh this time, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make your brother Aaron your prophet. And he shall be the mouthpiece for you. He said, but to Pharaoh, I will make you as God, as me. When you talk to Pharaoh, do not talk to Pharaoh like Moses talking to Pharaoh. Talk to Pharaoh as if you are Pharaoh's God. Oh, you don't know how good that is. Maybe I'll say it again. Talk to Pharaoh, to the powers that be, to the powers that suppress you, to the powers that oppress you, whether they are conservative, Republican, Democrat, whatever they are. Talk to them not as if you have a hat in your hand, but talk to them as if they do not respond to you in the correct way, it ain't gonna rain. The church has lost that power because the church is caught up with making their daughters confess their pregnancies and standing up there talking about voodoo don't work. Voodoo is a sin before God. Don't get me started here. Because I've got to deal with some of these things, and I don't want to deal with them because some of these folk are my friends. But I don't have to deal with my friends. I can deal with the theories and the philosophies behind it that are hurting our people. And so what we begin to understand, finally Moses understood, talk to Pharaoh as if I am Pharaoh's God. And he says to Pharaoh, if you don't let him go this time, you're going to lose your firstborn. Pharaoh says, yeah, okay. Let's see whose God is God. That's always been the thing. This is what the problem is in America right now. You are about, on the day of the inauguration, to go into a thing of whose God is God. Right now, your churches are very weak. I'm going to be very real with you. Your churches are extremely weak because the church is not the building, are the people. The people are being suppressed so much and oppressed so much, they don't know who they are. And they're waiting on a deliverer. They're waiting on a Moses. They're waiting on a Dr. King. And these guys are not going to show up. The problem, you have to have like upon as like. The problem is not the president or the as coming in president of the United States. That's not your problem. The problem is the spirit behind it. And you're going to need more than a Baptist jump and shout, or holiness rolling on the floor, or oil pouring. You're going to need a whole lot more than that to deal with the spirit that is about to be poured out upon this earth right now. You look back at this country just dropped 7 points into the 18th bracket of happiness. This country has lost 7 points of happiness from last year. It is 18th in the world to be the happiest place in the world. This country has more incarcerated people, over 2 million incarcerated people, that is believed that they would actually become the fifth, if they all came together, would become the fifth largest city in the United States of America. America is down at the bottom of the list concerning mathematics. They have eliminated their arts from their school programs. And then saying we're going to eliminate certain things about history. While in Germany, there is classes that are being taught in the elementary stage as well as the high school stage about Nazi Germany, the problems they had and what happened during the Holocaust, and teaching it to such an extent that the German children, Jews and German, will never ever make that mistake again. You tell me where in America and American schools are they teaching about slavery and saying so that it will never happen again. What they're saying is we don't want to teach it because it will make our children feel bad. And by saying that, you begin to eliminate the teaching from America. Have you any idea what sin does unannounced, what sin will do undealt with, what sin will do when you do not confront it, what sin will do when you do not change the teaching of it? It festers, it molds, it becomes a black mold in your house that the lungs of your country will inhale, and that will kill you. America is about to die from its original sin of race. But this is a big toll. Where do we begin? We begin with a strong church. And we begin with a church that must not be afraid of our teaching. What do you mean afraid of our teaching? You're going to just have to, you can't just hold on. There's some things that are taught out of European Christianity that we can hold on to. But there are also things you're going to have to pick up from other places here and there to understand your spirituality. We were told, I'll never forget, that we need to take all that jumping and shouting and hollering and everything out of our churches. And I got to the point, listen, some of you been into them, that when people who were different color skin would come into the church, do you know that the spirit of the church would be suppressed? And they would say, I hope Pastor don't start all that. Boom, boom. Because we got white people here. You remember that? What makes you suppress yourself? Because of the presence of a human being. It's a spirit. And it's a spirit that comes along when you lack knowledge. Who is the originator? The originator is the one that does everything. And not only is he the originator, but he is the creator. Out of the originator comes the creator. The creator begins to move and begins to speak and talk to himself. And things begin to move. Light, because God is light. We call him God because we ain't got no other name for him. And so God begins to move as light. Out of God comes your planets and your moons and your molten volcanic type of eruptions and the power that creates other things, and everything creates itself, and that thing creates itself, and that thing creates itself. You said, well, what? The planet has to cool so that it creates something. Inside the planet are the seeds of another creation that must begin. And inside of the seas are the seeds of fish and amphibians. Inside of those seeds are the originating parts of human beings. Are you going to say that we evolved? Oh, yes, you evolved. Yeah, you can turn, well, we don't believe in evolution. Well, if you don't believe in evolution, I'm going to tell you what belief is. Belief is taking a selfie of your ignorance. Once you take it, you now have a record of it. But if you never change, Then 5 years from now, and you look back, oh, look at how ignorant I was 5 years ago. That's my ignorance. And if you never change your belief, then guess what? You are still ignorant 5 years later. Believe, that's what I believe. We believe this. Well, just because you believe it, what is it? What is you believe? God is the originator. God is the creator. God is the generator. God is the generator. God is the manifestator. God is all of these things until he finally gets to us. And now we begin to understand about who we are. God is the rock of all ages. We are a piece of the rock. David picked 5 smooth stones out of a riverbed that came from a mountain which is just within his eye shot, which means that smaller rocks come from a bigger rock. A bigger rock comes from a bigger rock. A bigger rock comes from a mountain. God is the rock of all ages. Evidently, who are we? We are the smaller rock of the bigger rock. So evidently, when we are born, the scripture says we are born in sin, shaped in iniquity. It don't mean we are born as sin and shaped by or shaped as iniquity. There's no sin in us and there's no iniquity in us. It says we are born in it and shaped by it. We are moved. We're like a jello mold. It's iniquity and all these becomes molds, and if we pour it in the mold, we become in the shape of it. But if you become in the shape of it, doesn't mean you have to stay that way, because you can be transmolded or transformed by the renewing of your mind, according to Romans chapter 12. And so now when we come in this planet, the goal is about transformation. Even the scripture says you cannot become fully of what you are until Christ is formed in you. In other words, Christ don't just jump in you, Christ is formed in you. If Christ is formed in you, it means that Christ, which means the anointed of God, is already in you as a piece of the rock from the mountain. God is already inside of you. You got as much God as you actually can take. You can't take no more God. Ain't no need of asking God for more power. You can't take the power you got. And so all of a sudden, this woman is sick. She is sick, and she has lost everything that she has. The sickness has taken her money. The sickness has taken her health. The sickness has now taken her religious self-esteem. And then all of a sudden, the scripture says she heard that Jesus was in town. Now, just hearing that Jesus is in town don't mean nothing. She must have heard something about him. Something. It don't take much. A grain of mustard seed is all you need, and it can change everything. It can move a mountain. And the woman heard that Jesus, and she said within herself, she said within herself. She didn't say up to sky. She didn't say to the man on the throne. She didn't say to the guy sitting in the big chair. She didn't say to the white guy with the white crown and the white scepter and the white chair and the white throne. She said within herself, in which, what self was it? It was the extraordinary I. She talked to the piece of her that was the God of her. She talked to the God within her. She talked to that God inside. And she says, if I can but touch. What do you mean? Why did she say if? What do you mean by if? Now she's beginning to do something that we don't necessarily understand about what faith is. She's now beginning, if means to begin to control your doubt. How do you get doubt out of your faith? You must squeeze it out by controlling it. You must face your doubt, know what it is, learn from good teachers. If you're sitting up in a church, they're just telling you you got to tarry for this, baby, you're going to be tarrying for a long time. You got to squeeze this doubt. Doubt are pictures pictures of anything other than what you want. If I can but touch the hem of his garment, doubt is if I can get through the crowd, if I can just get through the street, if I can get to people, if they don't stop me, maybe they're going to stop me, maybe they're going to grab me, maybe they're going to push me back, maybe those big old disciples with their muscles are going to grab me and throw me away from Jesus. Maybe, see, all of these are maybes. She's dealing with an if. There's a difference between an if and a maybe. Maybe it's what other folk might do. If it's what I will do. If is the creative. Oh, my time is up. I hope I did good. The word this year is bold. I talk to people and they say, you know what, Dr. Ed, I meet a lot of people who say, you know, I'm an educated person, but they talk to me and tell me, you know, you keep flaunting your education, keep using all those big words. Or a person may say they don't like the way I talk, or they don't like the way I look, or they don't like the way I dress. Or, I mean, just a lot of things that people will tell other people what they don't like about them. But you know what I'm going to say to you? Sometimes you got to get to a place in your life that you got to get bold about who you are. Now, that doesn't mean you don't make changes. Hey, check an image consultant out. Hey, go online, see what the latest fashions are. Leaf through a magazine. Check some things out. Learn how to talk about things. Take some voice lessons. Do whatever you want to. Make some changes this year. But once you make those changes, let it be you that makes those changes. And once you're satisfied with you, then be the most extraordinary you can ever be. That's what I'm teaching on all this year, is talking about the extraordinary I, the power of that true I of who you are. So take a moment and emphasize it, because giving makes a difference. When you connect your giving with who you are, it reinforces the power of who you are. That's right. It's not just saying, oh, I'm a nice person. You got to give something. When you give something away, whether it's a smile, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a pat on the back, it reinforces it. I want you to take a moment, make a contribution to what we're doing. I don't know what the amount is that's in your mind, but choose one. Might be $8, might be $10, whatever it is. Do it now. You can do it on your text to give 713-742-2035. But whatever you do it now, right now. We would be so eternally grateful, and it would make me happy. Thank you so much. I appreciate exactly everything that you're doing.